от имени народа и правительства СССР я заверяю всех американцев, что мы искренне стремимся к улучшению наших отношений.
For many years after the fall of the Soviet Union, it looked like President Bush's vision of a new world order had become reality. Russia and the United States were partners in peace. Eastern Europe was free. South Africa elected a black president. Even China, the only major communist power on earth, embraced Western trade and investments with open arms. Then, starting in 1998, the Great New Order started to crumble. Russia's economy collapsed. India and Pakistan, free from superpower restraints, escalated a nuclear arms race. Now armed with nuclear missiles, they once again came to blows over the province of Kashmir. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein announced he would no longer cooperate with UN weapons inspectors. US and Britain ordered airstrikes, but with little effect. Yugoslav President Milosevic launched an all-out war against ethnic Albanians in the Serbian province of Kosovo. NATO responded with a devastating air war, which deeply upset relations between Russia and the United States. To make matters worse, the US mistakenly bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. China was furious. Then, a congressional investigation concluded that China had stolen highly classified secrets of no less than 7 American nuclear warheads. 10 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the world is back on the verge of a Cold War between nuclear powers. Armageddon, the great clash of the apocalypse. All prophecies have spoken of a last and decisive battle of the worlds. One such man was a convict named John. He was a member of the early Christian church of Ephesus, who was captured by the Romans.
The big question among scholars and Christians, of course, is which John, or who is this John? Many people assume that since John is such a popular Christian name, that the author of this book, who does call himself John, must be the same as the apostle named John, the son of Zebedee, to whom the fourth gospel is attributed, as well as the so-called letters of John. But these days, most scholars realize that the style of the book of Revelation is so different from the gospel and the letters that they are most likely not written by the same person.
John was sentenced to the stone quarries of Patmos, just off the coast of today's Turkey. At Patmos, John began to have visions of the end of the world. He saw a book enclosed by 7 seals. Each seal reveals a new phase of the apocalypse. The breaking of the 7th seal brings forth an army of 200 million soldiers that will kill 1/3 of the world's population.
They kill with sword, famine, and pestilence. Demon spirits went abroad to assemble the kings of the world for battle on the great day of God the Almighty, in a place called Armageddon.
We are living in an era where we grew up with science fiction movies. And so somebody who wants to make that kind of an apocalyptic good versus evil movie, as George Lucas did, we have him using spaceships and lightsabers and all sorts of other, contraptions that we're used to seeing from our sci-fi literature and sci-fi movies. Well, in the first century, in order to describe this struggle between good and evil, of course they made use of the symbols that were available in their own day and age, in their own repertoire. And so we find swords and trumpets and horses and plagues and all sorts of other images that we might find very strange, but would have been completely and totally understandable to people of the first century when they're reading this.
In a place called Armageddon.
The choice of Armageddon, or Megiddo, was no accident. Since the days of the Egyptian Empire, Megiddo had been the battlefield of the Middle East. Edgar Cayce, too, believes that the last great war would erupt in the Middle East.
In Libya, and in Egypt, in Ankara, and in Syria, through the straits around those areas above Australia, in the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf.
And so does Nostradamus. With breathtaking accuracy, Nostradamus describes exactly how the events of the last 27 years, beginning in 1979, will propel us to World War III.
The great empire will invade, but the Muslims will find the lands exposed. The old law of Islam will decline, and another more seductive one will rise.
Civil war erupts in Beirut. Peacekeeping forces sent by President Reagan are the victim of a major suicide attack.
The cruel sect of the Muslims will come, hiding weapons under their robes, sending ahead clever men without laws.
The next phase, a new Russia is reborn, led by Boris Yeltsin. Arabs join Western nations to evict Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait.
Now, the 28 countries with forces in the Gulf area have exhausted all reasonable efforts to reach a peaceful resolution, have no choice but to drive Saddam from Kuwait by force. We will not beg.
One day, the great powers will become friends. Their great power will be seen to increase. The new land will be at the height of its power. To the man of blood, the number is reported.
Then a violent war erupts in Kosovo. Russia and the US take sides. The great superpower alliance is unraveling.
The two will not remain allied for long. Within 13 years, they surrender to barbarism.
13 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, the long-simmering tensions in the Balkans and the Middle East will lead to a new war. The Hopi Indians have warned the same.
World War III will be started by those peoples who first revealed the light of divine wisdom in the old world. Mesopotamia, the center of Islam today.
Local conflicts in Europe and the Middle East gradually pull the superpowers into full-scale war.
This is Jim McVeigh, reporting live from Kosovo. The first shots have been fired in a standoff between Russian and American peacekeepers in the Balkans.
Famine and war will come. Help will be too late. Iran mobilizes to invade Macedonia.
This is Catherine Hunt in Saudi Arabia. Forces of the Iranian Liberation Army have launched a surprise attack on Iraq and Afghanistan. The United States has launched an emergency airlift to resupply its bases.
Iran, supported by China, seizes the moment to create a pan-Islamic union absorbing Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Jordan.
With Israeli forces fighting a desperate battle in the Negev, Iranian spearheads have pushed through the Sinai and are now only 50 miles east of Cairo.
Tunisia and Algeria will be incited by the Iranians.
Moscow is calm again after last night's bloody takeover by Russian nationalists. The Red Army is on full alert. We have reports of major troop movements towards the border with Poland and Hungary.
Troops will approach from Russia. The destroyer will ruin the ancient city. Italy will be destroyed.
Acting in concert with Russian forces, Iran initiates a pincer movement through the Mediterranean.
Are confirming rumors that Libyan forces under Colonel Gaddafi have now joined the Iranian army. We have seen massive troop movements towards the Mediterranean coast.
Good evening. The United States has announced that unless Iran ceases all offensive operations by midnight, Washington time, the United States will attack.
On the night of March 10th, American forces stage a daring night attack using airborne troops from bases in Saudi Arabia in order to strike into the soft underbelly of Iran. The U.S. forces have captured the southernmost provinces of Iraq and Iran. The Iranian occupation army in Europe is forced to turn back and meet the threat in the Middle East. The two armies meet in the middle in the ancient battlefield of Megiddo, in the heart of Israel, just as John of Patmos had prophesied. In all, the war will last 3 years and 7 months. Victory, says Nostradamus, will go to a man born on American soil. It is the last major war in human history. A war, if it comes, may not evolve as Nostradamus has described. There may be other sources of conflict on the horizon.
The unfortunate fact is that we have different countries with different kinds of interests. And those interests are going to vary, and those variations will lead to different kind of cycles in politics, history, economics, and so on. Nobody thought that Yugoslavia, for example, would be, which was the most developed country in the Eastern Bloc, would become such a disastrous social, political circumstance in the world. So it will happen. It will continue to happen, in my view.
Many scholars agree that the role of China is crucial. China today resembles the Soviet Union immediately after World War II. With its vast population and landmass, It has tremendous resources at its disposal. It can use these assets to become a prosperous member of the world community or embark on a vast arms race to try to match its perceived adversaries, including the United States. The age of Pisces will soon be over. The age of Aquarius is upon us. It can be an age of great turmoil or an age of peace and harmony. Long term, we have to accept the fact